You're very welcome along to another edition of Tipp Cast. My name is Shane Brophy. I've been Ian Gargan, joined once again by Noel Dundon, a local reporter, and on this edition by former Tipperary Underage player and Waterford senior Brian Flannery. Brian and Noel, you're welcome to the show.
Morning, Shane. How are things? Morning, Ryan.
Good. We're recording this at 10 to 10 on Friday morning, and thankfully both teams have just been announced. So I suppose for anybody who listens to this later in the day, Tipperary have made one change from the team that beat Clare, that started against Clare last weekend. Willie Connors is in for Alan Tynan, who appears to be injured. He's not named on the 26th, and Darren McCarthy named on the bench. So, but we know that things can change maybe on Sunday. And then for Waterford, they have made two changes from the team that lost to Limerick. Gavin Fives and Michael Kiley are coming in. Patrick Curran and Patrick Fitzgerald dropping out. I suppose, Brian, I'll start with you. Your early thoughts on those two selections.
Yeah, it is interesting. I suppose, look, Michael Kiley did make quite a good impression when he came on the last day against Limerick. He's interestingly, I see he's named at 14 at full forward. I suppose, look, he's a player that has suffered from injury a lot in recent years. He's still in the prime of his career. Hasn't quite made the impact at senior level yet as would have been anticipated. He's a guy that scored 4 goals in a Fitzgibbon Cup final not that long ago, although it's a few years ago now too at this stage. But not surprised at all. He's a real, I suppose, ball winner, and is probably an ideal foil for the likes of Desi Hutchinson, maybe playing beside him. So no surprise there. Gavin Fives again is a player that has done well, came on the last day. He's a player that has great, I suppose, athleticism. He's good on the feet. Kind of player that can play anywhere. He'll probably operate a wing back, but he can certainly play anywhere, and he's capable of coming forward and getting a score too, which he's done in the past as well. So yeah, not surprising. Patrick Curran is dropping out again. I'd be a big fan of Patrick Curran. He's a fantastic scorer. Maybe doesn't have that same athleticism as some of the other players. Shane Bennett, interestingly, came on the last day against Limerick as well and made an impression. He's another guy who's got plenty of pace. You're bound to see him at some stage as well. I suppose the big thing, from the team announcement is that, Waterford have options on the bench as well. Whether it be Patrick Fitzgerald potentially coming on, he is a top forward. Austin Gleeson obviously isn't getting the start again. Very little game time so far in the championship. Very likely to see action in Semple Stadium at some stage. Probably a little surprising he hasn't been used more. The word is that, look, he is injury-free, but has very little minutes, I suppose, under the belt.
Yeah, and I suppose, Noel, from the Tipperary point of view, I suppose the expectation was that Alan Kynan pulled up sharply late against Clare. It looked like a hamstring, so obviously that's him out. I suppose Willie Connors is kind of like for like in terms of the position. Willie offers something different. He wouldn't bring that same element, maybe direct running and physicality. He'd be more linking the play, ducking and diving, like very, very good that way. I suppose surprising thing from the team that was announced, look, we don't know what's going to happen on Sunday, is that I suppose Darren McCarthy isn't coming back into the starting lineup. But look, I suppose we were all trying to predict our team for the weekend, and would we be better off maybe Noel McGrath starting off the bench this time? And you're probably thinking that could still happen yet as well, because you're looking at 22, 23 degrees and on Sunday afternoon. That would you be better off Noel maybe coming on fresh rather than having to take him off middle of the second half when he's tiring? Like, so I suppose we'll know more when we hear the team announced, and I suppose about 1:30 on Sunday.
Yeah, the Willie Connors move isn't a surprise to me, Shane, to be honest with you. As you say, Alan Tynan pulled up fairly sharply and was waving his arms around very, very quickly, so he knew that he had done something, and he was gone straight away off the field. He put in a huge shift on Saturday night. He really was up and down the field all the time. And even though probably the big standout moment was that hand pass to John McGrath for the goal, that's the one that everybody will recall. But his work rate was huge. And I suppose that's what the management team have gone for in Willie Connors as well. That we know what we get from Willie Connors. You get an awful lot of work, you get an awful lot of movement around that middle third. He has the ability to take scores as well, which is always a help too, you know.
And he's always looking. He's always looking for the ball. Like if you're Rhys Shelley or any lad in the back, like he's always he's the one guy that will never shy away from looking for the ball.
Yeah, he shows for it all the time. He does, you know. And if you're a goalkeeper standing up to puck out a ball, and particularly if things aren't going well, you know, fellas can go hiding very easily. But Willie Connors, to be fair to him, is always one who's moving and looking and offering the option for that puck out, or for to be an out player for the half back line or full back line if they need him as well. Like so, you know, it's Alan Tyne obviously is a loss. You know, you like to have as many players as you can available, but I think Willie Connors is more than an able replacement there. You know, the difficulty, of course, is that you lose his impact then later on in the game. Like when he came on against Clare, he had a big impact too, coming on. And you know, you mentioned the Noel McGrath situation there, and the Darren McCarthy one. You know, Noel made a huge contribution on Saturday night for, you know, sort of 45, 50 minutes or thereabouts, and was well in the game at all the stages of it. Gave some terrific ball. One I recall a great pass to John, that sort of telepathic understanding that they have, where John shimmied and then moved back out, and Noel knew exactly where to put the ball for the goal chance, the one that John hit over the bar actually. But so maybe management are looking at it and saying, look, we might be better to get 45, 50 minutes out of Noel rather than maybe bring them in perhaps in a crisis situation late in the game or something like that, you know. The other side of it too, Shane, I suppose, is following that performance last Saturday night, it'd be very difficult to leave off somebody, you know, bar they're injured, you know, we say drop somebody. You're not really dropping them in the modern game, but very difficult to leave off Jason Ford, John McGrath, Jake Morris, Andrew Ormond, Connor Stakelum, all played huge parts. So Dara probably has to kind of battle his way back into the team now, you know.
Yeah, so as Brian, somebody made the point to me during the week that the benefits of Dara starting is, like, I'd say he's up there. I'd say he's probably the best free taker, maybe, of TJ Reid in the country. His accuracy is incredible, and look, Jason can miss one or two during the game. I think this is a game where, I don't think he can afford to miss anything. So, but we always know Jason is very, very good, and then I suppose you have to balance with the fact that Dara played 65 minutes during the week for the under-20s. Like, how would you be better bring him on in the middle of the second half, fresh, probably eager for the fray, maybe, than maybe at the start, maybe. It's an interesting one. And as Noel said, do you get the 40, 50 minutes out of Noel, or do you get 20, 25 at the end when he's fresh? Like, I suppose it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, look, I suppose initially, you know, I would have said I'd certainly be starting Darren McCarthy. You know, to have a free checker, I think he was 100% Wednesday night.
Yeah.
The under-20s, like, that's like, he came back and hit frees there close to his own 45. You know, that's a huge benefit. It's a box ticked going into a game, your final game that you have to win. Look, maybe he will start. I suppose like Noel said, though, is who do you leave out to get Darren McCarthy back into the team? You know, that's the other side of it, and having played so well in Ennis, it would be very difficult to leave any of those starting six forwards out again. You know, I probably, if it was me, I'd probably start him, because I think in a game that is likely to be quite close and very small margins, you know, one or two frees either way could make a huge difference. So yeah, it is an interesting one. Maybe before we get the throw in on Sunday, there might be one or two late changes. So, you know, I suppose, look, we'll keep an eye on it. But I'm a big fan of Darren McCarthy, to be honest with you. You know, like, what he does is, even Wednesday night and under-20s, like, the unselfishness of him, to, you know, the way he passed the ball around, very good in the air actually as well, won a lot of ball in the air. but wasn't forcing things, wasn't taking shots from poor angles. His decision making was good, and very much a team player. So look, if he doesn't start him in, he's a great player to have that option to come on. But I think peace of mind to have, that free taken boxed off, I think would be a big advantage.
Yeah, and I suppose Noel, you'd look at the both teams and both benches, and you look at the Waterford bench and say that they've probably greater potential off their bench. You have Shane Bennett, you have Patrick Curran, Austin Gleeson, the two Fitzgeralds, and that's just to name five. And that's not to say Tipp's bench is weaker, but there's definitely more experience coming off the Waterford bench on Sunday.
Yeah, probably more marquee names, Shane. Yeah. Really, although to be honest about it, I thought our bench worked very, very well last Saturday night, and I think a guy who's really shown up with the under-20s and came on again was Oisin O'Donoghue, and is doing really, really well. Had a good league for Tipp as well, and he's been another really good find. But then you've got the experience of Seamus Kennedy there to come in and just steady the ship when Ronan went off with that finger injury, that blood sub one for a couple of minutes. Seamus came in and it was no big deal to him to just slot in there, He's probably one of the unsung heroes of this current team, in the sense that he can actually operate at midfield, in the half back line, in the half forward line if you needed him to. He's that kind of flexibility is really really good. Our versatility is really good for Tipp. Sean Kennelly came in, got his pint, did very well too. We may not have the standout names there. Noel, I suppose, would have been the name for the previous games where he wasn't starting. And, you're kind of looking at it and saying, well, if Noel McGrath comes into your team midway through the second half, it gives a massive lift to your supporters and all that. But you could see the same with maybe Austin Gleeson if he made his way onto the field at Semper Stadium on Sunday, to be a huge, huge lift to Waterford as well. But I'd be happy enough with our bench. I think we have players there who can come in. It's not easy to come in, Shane, and make an impact. Some players aren't actually able to do that. They need to be starting in games, and then other players find it difficult to start. We've had one or two of those as well who are better impact players maybe. But I think in the guys we have there at the minute, we're pretty okay, I would say.
Yeah, and I suppose just before we break down the game, as Brian, I suppose from it. It's Tipp's last game. They need a win will get them through. A draw is probably a freak set of results will probably be enough. Waterford still have the Cork game to come, but in the same way, probably at the start of this championship, Tipp people were saying the Clare and Waterford games are the one for Tipp to get through. Waterford thinking the same, the Clare game at home, the Tipp game away, and they have 15 days to build up for this. Tipp have 8. It's for a team for a group that's never gotten out of the round robin, even though they'll have the Cork game to come, it's a huge opportunity for Waterford on the weekend.
Well, look, it's a huge opportunity for both counties, and let's be honest, a month ago, most people would have been predicting the two teams not to qualify from Munster would be Waterford and Tipperary. If whichever win on Sunday are guaranteed to be in the top 3, it's a huge opportunity for both. Yes, Waterford will go to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and Cork, the following Sunday, but everybody certainly down here in Waterford is saying this is Waterford's best opportunity. They may have another one, but this is their best opportunity. Waterford's record against Tipperary has been pretty good in the last few years. 2 years ago, if you remember, Waterford went to Thurles, were already out of the championship, and really kind of scuppered Tipperary's year to a degree, because a victory would have put Tipperary into a Munster final.
They're really set in stone, the slide that probably continued probably to the start of this year. I don't think we ever fully recovered from that.
Yeah, and so I think this is it's so big for both counties, because Sunday evening we'll be talking about the brilliant achievement of Liam Cahill and Tipperary, or the brilliant achievement of Peter Queally and Waterford, to get out of Munster. And let's be honest, you look at Munster, you have the All-Ireland champions Clare in it, you have the 6 in a row Munster champions Limerick, and you have Cork, who've just won the National League. So, it's to try negotiate those games and to get out of Munster. If you said to Peter Creeley or Liam Cahill, I'm sure at the start of the championship, your season depended on, either beating Waterford in Thurles or Waterford beating Tipp in Thurles, you'd probably sign up to that, to be honest with you. So it's massive for both. There is, I suppose, a bit of a contrast in the teams, in that this is very much an experienced Waterford team. It's a mature team. There's no rookies. There's no under 20 players on the 26. They've been around for quite a good while at this stage.
Would there be much chatter, Brian? Sorry for cutting in. That the window for that under 21 team it's running out. Like it's that won the All Ireland in 9 years ago. That they've got to, I suppose they got to an All Ireland 5 years ago. We can't forget that. Got to a semi-final 4 years ago. They've been further. They've been closer to winning Lee McCarthy than Tipp have in the last 5 years. So would there be, I suppose, a bit of pressure that it's now or never, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the, I suppose, the challenge that I'm sure Peter Creeley would have been putting to the Waterford players in the last couple of weeks, is that if not now, when? Because, most of those players, whether, your Conor Prunty, Stephen Bennett, Patrick Curran, Austin Gleeson, Shane Bennett, they've all won the minor and under 20 All Irelands. They haven't achieved that at senior level. They haven't negotiated the round robin in Munster. Yeah, I mean, they were in the All Ireland final in the COVID All Ireland, but they've struggled, I suppose, in a lot of senses since. So this is the huge opportunity, and it is that challenge. If not now, when? The opportunity is there. You'd have to argue, will Waterford be better next year? And that's difficult. I suppose the classic example this year is when Waterford had an almost virtually changed side in the National League. The first game against Carlow up in Dr. Cullen Park, they lost to Carlow. So I suppose the gap between the first 15 and the next 15, is significant enough. So, having said that, when Waterford have everybody on the field, when they have the best players, they're very competitive, and and any given day can beat any other team. But the clock is certainly ticking. The core of the team, the bigger players, they're in that 29, 30, 31 year bracket. Jamie Barron, Tyg de Burka, those players as well. There's, it's certainly, and they're playing probably since they're 19, they're 10, 11, 12 seasons playing senior hurling. There is probably a concern that there's a gap behind them. Waterford are in a Munster minor final tonight, but players like that are a long ways off playing senior. Waterford haven't won an under 20 game, believe it or not, since they won the All Ireland in 2016. So that's why you don't see there's no under 20 players, there's no 21-year-olds on the Waterford, not just the team, but on the 26. So it's it is very, very much if not now, when. And that adds, I suppose, maybe adds a little bit to the pressure as well. But as I said, this is Waterford's best opportunity, and I think that's fair to say. I know going to Páirc Uí Chaoimh is not a great prospect if you have to go there and win. Waterford's record is far better against Tipperary, so it's huge for both counties. The great thing is, one of them will be true after Sunday. So, I mean, that's something in itself.
Yeah, I suppose there are similarities with the game 2 years ago when I suppose Tipp went in. I suppose they're marginal favour. Some they probably a bit more expectation on them, but I suppose Waterford came with kind of a free swing, and Tipp we're hearing all these stories about Billy Nolan playing as a sweeper, and look, he was outstanding on the day. But I get the sense that there's, and I know you were down in Ennis on Saturday. I wasn't able to be there, but there's a fierce unity with this group. There's no case of looking ahead. They're enjoying the hurling. They're enjoying being together. They're enjoying the challenge that it's. I definitely sensed that day 2 years ago there was a softness coming into the stadium. I don't think that'll be within them this time.
No, and Shane, one of the interesting things I found about Saturday night down in Ennis, I was down relatively quickly from the press box to the dressing room area to do the aftermatch stuff, and the there was no major shouting and roaring and jumping around the place and all that coming out of the dressing room, which was a little bit strange. In fact, the atmosphere in Ennis after the game finished was quite eerie. There was a lot of silence there. Obviously, the home side and support had been silenced in that, But even when you went down to the Tipp dressing room, that it was very, very calm, and it was kind of job done, move on. Here we go again, get ready to begin the preparations and the recovery process for next Sunday. I found that because we're all on a high after winning the game, to be honest with you, and then you go down to the dressing room and they're really cool and calm and that. But I suppose when you look at it, the real bonus for Tipperary going into this game on Sunday is the fact that the cutting of the cake is in your own hands. And I think had we been told that at the start of the year, that having gone away to Cork, having entertained Limerick at home, and having gone down to Ennis, that when the final game in the round robin will come round, it's quite simple: win the game and you go forward. I think Tipperary would have taken that big time at the start of the campaign. It's probably what they've targeted, to be honest with you. It's probably what they've looked at and what they've said at the start of the year. This is what we want to achieve. This is where they are now, and it's just another step on the road. You talk about that unity as well. To see the way the players were greeted as they came off the field by the subs and when they were coming out onto the field at the start as well. All of the extended panel there on the pitch, cheering them on, clapping them on the back, getting them out. But when the game was in the melting pot and the subs were being made, the players who had given everything and expended everything coming off the field, greeted again by more players. Noel McGrath, one of them. Noel was taken off with, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, whatever it was. And every player that came off Noel was up and out on his feet to throw the arm around the shoulder and bring him in. I thought there was a real sense of togetherness in the squad, and I can't see that there won't be complacency on Sunday, because we can't afford to be. It's not as though you're expected to come in and cakewalk this game. It won't happen like that. They know that. They've had that experience from 2 years ago, when Waterford came to town and threw a grenade into the pack, So I the one thing, whatever happens on Sunday, I think, whether Tipp win, whether Tipp lose, whether it's a draw, it won't be because of complacency anyway.
No, I definitely get that sense locally that sometimes in the past Tipp had a big win and there was a lot of hooping and holler and Asher will go in and Sunday will win, and I don't get the sense that. I think there's a huge respect for the challenge that Waterford are bringing, and if you're a believer in fate, you say Waterford are going to get out as Munster at some stage. This is a great opportunity for them. Maybe they're due as well. So look, but hopefully maybe we'll hold off for one more year from a Tipp point of view. I suppose, Brian, looking at the matchups potentially, and I suppose with Owen Kelly, former Tipp player, Tipp coach, is in the Waterford backroom. I suppose Liam Cahill and Michael Beavens know intimately the vast majority of the Waterford players. That'll probably help them in terms of matchups. And I just maybe started with Michael Kiley and say he's going to start, and I'd be thinking he's the kind of guy Ronan Maher would love to mark. Ronan likes the physical. He likes the one-on-one physical confrontation. And say maybe if Kiley starts at 11 or 14, would you see? I could see Ronan Maher going on him, because Owen Connolly's equally comfortable maybe going out to 6 if Kiley goes inside.
Yeah, I suppose the tactical side will be interesting, and it touched on it 2 years ago. Billy Nolan operated as a kind of a sweeper in Davy Fitzgerald's team. I suppose that day the surprising thing was that so many ball landed at Billy Nolan's feet, and Tipperary were unable to play around him. Given the fact that Tipperary hit 4 goals up in Ennis last week, I'd expect maybe Tadhg de Burca will probably certainly play that little bit deeper in front of the full backline in the early stages, if not throughout. Now that may mean that at the opposite end of the field, that Ronan Maher may be maybe Tipperary's, I suppose, spare defender, and then it's down to which team uses the possession better. But it has been I suppose an issue in some of these games with Waterford Tipperary, is that not being able to play around Tadhg de Burca. He's probably the most experienced player at operating that role. It will be interesting to see. I think somewhere along the line, then the decision will be to push up or on one end of the field or the other.
I think definitely this year Tip look like we're a lot smarter in how we're using the ball. We're not giving it away, just driving it up the field anymore, making a hero out of maybe a deep lying centre back. That we've definitely become more comfortable with the modern game, Brian.
Yeah, and that's I think that's every team. You have to be able to play it both ways, and to to avoid that I suppose man in the middle. The surprising thing I suppose last week was that Clare seemed to have nobody in the middle, and Tipperary took advantage. Like that Waterford backline is good. Mark Fitzgerald is a fine hurler, both I suppose defensively and attacking. Ty de Burka, I suppose, has been a rock at the centre of the defence for the last decade. Conor Prunty is he's a huge man, the edge of the square. Ian Kenny has plenty of pace. Irla Daly is a fine hurler as well. Gavin Fives is coming in. He'll probably play wing back. Again, he has plenty of pace going forward and backward. So it's going to be, I think it will be which team uses that possession well. I think the potential, I suppose, is that if Tadhg de Burka does drop off, whether it is a Noel McGrath at centre forward or Jake Morris, imagine there'll be opportunities to shoot at the post, to try work the ball to someone, that number 11 in space and as I said, to shoot at the post.
Brian, I suppose Waterford have tended to play Tadhg as an out sweeper up to maybe I from you would have seen the matches this year. Has he been more of a centre back than an out sweeper this year, or how have they played him?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, if you look at the last day out against Limerick, Cian Lynch really dictated the I suppose the play. I certainly felt Tadhg de Burka was probably too far off him, but there was great movement on that Limerick. I mean, Limerick really impressed me last time out, I suppose, as a bit of a tangent, and Limerick used the ball extremely well. Tadhg de Burka had very little impact on the game at all, but yeah, did kind of play closer to that sort of D, that edge of the D, than probably left Cian Lynch too far to roam. You will look the other side. Look, you will get that Waterford half backline will be coming back around the middle of the field. Your Stephen Bennett tend to cover Jack Prendergast. They will be looking for that sort of ball back around that middle third as well. And it's about winning possession, but then what do you do when you have the possession? Trying to work it, and I think that's where Noel McGrath is instrumental and probably a huge option for Tipperary, in that he can link the play very well. He can find the pass. He doesn't tend to waste ball. Willie Connors, in fairness, is a similar type of player. Very good on the ball, very good to find the right pass. So, I think you're right. Tipperary have improved hugely on that. Craig Morgan as well. I think they will probably lose the direct running of Alan Tynan if he's unable to go and injured. I mean, that's certainly a loss out of the team. The one thing I suppose in recent years that Waterford maybe have the edge on is that athleticism. Is that sort of all out running from from particularly in that middle third. And I suppose the other thing is Waterford are fresh coming into this game. They've had 15 days, 2 weeks break, which is significant and important in the Munster Championship. The other side of the coin, Tipperary have momentum, winning in Ennis, the under-20s winning during the week. I expect it'll be a huge Tipperary crowd in Semple Stadium. If they can feed off that, that in itself might be the difference in a very tight game.
I suppose Noel. I suppose we're trying to preempt maybe what's going to happen, and if Ronan is given a designated job, and I think that suits him. I think he relished the job on Duggan. We know how good he is in the air, and if he does go on Kiley, I thought Brian O'Mara was very influential. Ronan played, I think, right half back last weekend on Duggan for a lot of it, and it was Brian went in the middle, and the amount of ball he cut out, and if there's one thing about Brian, he has the athleticism to get forward. He's not just hitting it in now. He's prepared maybe to carry it, maybe break the line, give a hand pass off. I suppose he's finally, you would have seen him since he was a young lad. He's finally, the last few games, I suppose that he's getting comfortable being a senior intercounty hurler championship level.
Yeah, and he's getting an injury
extra belief in himself.
Yeah, and he's getting an injury-free run as well, Shane, which is important. That has been an issue for him, that he picked up a number of knocks over the course of the last couple of seasons, which cost him game time and that. But yeah, look, you mentioned Ronan. He did an outstanding job on Peter Duggan last week. In fact, the Tipperary backs were collectively outstanding last week. I mean, they confined Clare to 4 scores from play. The Clare forward line from 4 scores in play. Tony Kelly remained scoreless. David Reedy and Shane Meehan didn't score. Ryan Taylor got 2 points. Peter Duggan 1 point. And after that, you're talking about Tony Kelly and Mark Rogers getting the rest of them from play, from freeze, I should say. The interesting thing about it was that, Brian mentioned about the middle third and that Clare were kind of anonymous there. But the interesting thing, and I agree 100% with him, I thought Tipperary dominated the middle third, in fact. But the interesting thing was that 4 points came from play from the Clare players in midfield, with Sean Rinn getting 3 of them and Cathal Lone getting 1. Now you contrast that with the Tipperary forward line, where you have Andrew Orman getting 2-1, John McGrath 2-3, Jake Morris a couple of points, Jason Ford a few from play, as well as the ones that he struck from freeze. And therein was the story of the game. Tip took their chances, Clare didn't. I would also say that the Tipperary backs were, how will I put this, not afraid to take the foul when they had to do so. And Ryan is
that's smart too. There's no point.
You know what I mean?
No point in conceding goals if you can concede 1 point instead of 3. And okay, if you can manage the foul count to maybe lads and yellows, why not?
And that comes with experience too, Shane. Yeah. It's the experienced players who will do that, and they know when a move is like the way the modern game is played. You can see a break happening from 40, 50 yards out. Once a player gets it and starts to go, you can see that the goal is on, and it's about making the decision then. And you don't get a lot of time to make that decision. It's a split-second decision. Do I take him or do I let him go? And in the hope that you're going to dispossess. 9 times out of 10, you won't dispossess a modern top flight forward. You just won't do it. So Tipperary have introduced that little level of call it cynicism if you like, but it was missing from our backs from a number of seasons out, where we were a little bit too kind. But you're going to have backs who stand up to it, and I thought they really did that on Saturday night. The free count probably reflected it, but ultimately they won the game,
Yeah, I suppose, Brian, I'm just looking at other potential matchups from maybe a Tipperary defensive point of view. Probably Michael Breen and Desi Hutchinson looks a matchup there. I would have thought was with the legs of Breen.
Maybe Robert Doyle on Desi. That might be a matchup. I think this is a big.
I was sort of thinking Robert Doyle for Jamie Barron. I think he's if when Waterford play well, he plays well. I think just because of the way that Doyle was on Tony Kelly the last day, I was thinking that's kind of Kelly and Barron kind of have some similar traits.
Yeah, perhaps. I think, look, Desi Hutchinson is Waterford's captain. Hasn't really lit up the championship yet, or hasn't given that man of the match type performance. And look, he's certainly a player that Waterford will need at his best if Waterford are going to win the game. But he is a match winner if he gets it. I think he'll again. Desi's best games probably have been in Semple Stadium. I think he's one of the players to hit the net 2 years ago when Waterford won. I think it is key, I suppose. That middle of the field will still be where a lot of it is decided, because I often see with Waterford, if you see Desi Hutchinson out around the 45 or midfield trying to win ball, it means Waterford are in serious trouble. So, the closer the goal that Desi Hutchinson can play, the better for Waterford. But, they'll need to be able to win that ball around the middle to get, your Jack Prendergast on. The one thing that did cause Tipperary problems last Sunday, Noel alluded to, was when in the second half Clare started running at them. Yes, they conceded frees, but they add up over. Eventually they'll add up as well. It is also dangerous we saw the effect a black card, something like a black card, can have it on a team as well. So there's, I don't think we've seen it in the senior championship.
No, it's so rare in the under-21. We saw it and it was incredibly harsh, I thought, as well.
Yeah, look, it's amazing that it's certainly one that referees are in the senior Munster Championship have been reluctant to go to, but something like that could swing a game. It would have to be in, I suppose, if you're a full back or a cornerback, it would have to be in the back of your mind somewhere as well. But look, there's potential match winners all over the field on both teams.
In terms of your view of the Waterford backs and the tip forwards, like Prunty and John McGrath probably looks nailed on, and by who do you see maybe who will be tasked with Jake Morris or I would have said you're looking at, if you were to go by numbers, Mark Fitzgerald and Noel McGrath. Like Noel wouldn't, we know how good Mark Fitzgerald is getting up and down that right side. Well, could Tip be looking at somebody else, maybe a Conor Stakelum to go on him?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't think Noel McGrath and Mark Fitzgerald wouldn't be a great matchup, I suppose, from a Tipperary's perspective, because Mark Fitzgerald, he's I suppose the modern halfback in that he's very good at going forward. He has huge pace. He's capable of going forward and getting 2 and 3 points. McGrath tracking someone like him around the field or tracking back probably wouldn't be his strong point. I think you could see Noel in the centre, at centre forward, dropping off, trying to find the space. Conor Stakelum might be a better match for Mark Fitzgerald from a Tipperary perspective. I think Jake Morris is a player that has been really good. Often, I think, again, he's one of these players that maybe is more dangerous closer to goal. He has that goal threat. He's somebody that Waterford will certainly be having to keep an eye on. You could see an Ian Kenny, who's again pacey type of player, picking him up. But look, I think in general, Waterford's with the structure to have, Tyler Burke will definitely be 6. Conor Prunty will be 3. They won't change it too much. They're very much fixtures in the team. And okay, the cornerbacks might switch corners, but down that centre, Waterford have that core and that spine, and I don't think they'll be changing. Now that offers opportunity. As I said, with Tyler Burke at 6, it has. We've seen Tipperary have achieved it in the past where you drop off and you can, a Noel McGrath could hit 3-4 points from play, if you were able to recycle the ball in his direction, and because he may well get that latitude.
Yeah, and I suppose I suppose Limerick and Cork is probably the marquee game of the round, but I think this is the most important game of the round, because I say whoever loses, well, definitely for Tip, if they lose, they're effectively it'd be very hard to get through. Well, yeah, they will be gone. The draw probably wouldn't be the worst result in the world. Or Waterford would have a second chance the following week. I suppose if both Limerick and Tip were to win, wouldn't be some finish between Cork and Waterford the following weekend. That'd be more or less a shootout, like down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, so on. You never know with Cork, with the pressure on them, how would they go? But I suppose we'll let this weekend's matches play out first.
Yeah, there's still a bit of hurling to be played after this weekend, Shane. Yeah. It won't involve us in Munster anyway, and Barry make the Munster final, which would be brilliant. But I suppose we're focusing on Tip and Waterford, and as you said, there is another huge game being played down the road as well, which is brilliant. I mean, the Munster Championship has been outstanding; it really has. But just to kind of dip back into the Waterford Tip game on Sunday, it's like the old line that whoever scores the most will win the game. Obviously, that's the way hurling works. But I think this really is set up to be a game for forwards. I think both the Tipperary forwards and the Waterford forwards will relish Semper Stadium and the kind of space that it affords. And the winning of the game is going to be which set of backs can manage to stifle the opposition forwards the better throughout the game. I think on the balance of the way it went last weekend, I think Tipperary's backs will come into the game with a lot of confidence in their capabilities and in their level of understanding with playing with each other. They've faced a lot of mini crises in games through the championship so far. I referenced the Limerick game where Limerick came back at them hard after the break. the Clare game last weekend, where Clare brought it back to level, and the Cork game, where everything was a crisis really from 10 seconds into the match. So I think that the tip backs are battle hardened now. I think we're beginning to see that a little bit more. I suppose there's probably not a team more experienced in the championship, aside from Limerick maybe, than this current Water team, because as Brian said, they're around a long time and have been together a long time, and they can always produce that performance that comes from the top drawer. And I wondered early in the year how that would work for them, having played in the lower tier of the league, and you're playing against lower sort of standard teams, and you'd wonder, would Waterford be able to get to the pitch of Munster Championship hurling? But they've clearly shown that they can do that. So I think Waterford really come strong to Thurles on Sunday. I can't wait for the game. I can't wait for the weekend. I think it's going to be a magnificent Munster hurling weekend again, hopefully,
Yeah, sure. It's a tough one to go. So maybe I don't know how you're feeling about it, Brian. Your bleeding blood colours. Like I could see it going either way. I probably think with Tip with a bit of momentum and confidence, I think might get over the line. I don't think the 8-day turnaround. I think it was 6. I think the extra 2 nights sleep makes it is different than maybe going from a Saturday to a Sunday to a Saturday than an 8-day thing. I think Tip will be ready. I don't think that'll be an excuse at all. So how do you feel about it?
Yeah, look, it's I suppose the brilliant thing is it's in their own hands for both Waterford and Tipperary. Win the game and you're qualified, and that's the big target for all the teams trying to get out of Munster. So look, it is that I suppose Tip have the momentum, and I think that with a large home crowd that could make the difference at the end of the day. But this Waterford team, I suppose, have been there or thereabouts. There's no more passionate Waterford man than Peter Queally. He's now at the helm. I can't see anything but a huge Waterford challenge coming on Sunday. They've had the 2 weeks to prepare for this, and while they were they definitely looked flat. They had a 6-day turnaround to play Limerick the last day. They looked a little bit flat, and to be honest, to be within 6 points of Limerick was probably a decent result by the end of the game. But this is it. It may not be their last game, but it's their best throw of the dice to get out of Munster is Sunday. Deep down, the players management, they know that as well. So they will be throwing everything at it. I look, it's impossible to call. It's these small margins. It could be a referee's call. Hopefully not. You don't want that to decide the game. But you have big players on both sides. Tipperary have that momentum. That's and the 20s winning during the week can be a distraction with 3 players involved on the 26, but it can also be a kind of a lift as well. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, like Tip have the 20 in the bag. We'll touch on that in a second. But you mentioned earlier the Waterford Miners playing Cork in Semple Stadium tonight in the minor final. That's as big a game for Waterford at underage level in a long time.
Yeah, Waterford haven't won a minor title in 16 years. And before that, it was 17 years before that. So it's the first time that I suppose to have a group of players that are that are really good. That would be a boost. Now look, from a seniors perspective, the gap between minor and senior is very large. I suppose that's where the advantage, Tip winning 2 Munster titles at under 20 level, you're seniors within touch and distance. It's there for 3 or 4 of the players that are involved. But it's certainly more positive from a Water perspective to be involved, because you can only develop players better if they're competing in finals, if they're getting to the latter stages of minor and under 20 competitions. They get used to playing in front of bigger crowds. They get that experience. I think the future is bright, certainly for Tipperary from that point of view, because of what they've come in behind. It's a question whether that impetus that we've seen from the Darren McCarthy's, Sam O'Farrell, Oisin O'Donoghue, etc. this year, will that be enough to get the Tipperary senior team over the line, or will it take another year or two when Tipperary get a few more maybe of those younger players to add to your your Ronan Mahers and your Brian Amars, etc. So look, huge amount to look forward to. Thanks be to God for TG Carr as well. I mean, we get to watch that minor final is on TG Carr YouTube. It was great to watch the under-20s during the week. They cover a huge amount of games, which is brilliant if you are, I suppose, marooned a bit away from the camp.
Yeah, I suppose no, we'll just turn back to last Wednesday on the under-20 final, Tip 319, Clare 120. And just before we delve into the game, I just thought I suppose a few years ago when they had the rule where once you played senior, you couldn't go back to the 20s, and then there was then I suppose the pressure came on that at least maybe change it, but give the managements the opportunity to make the call themselves. And we saw that on Wednesday. Sam O'Farrell was held out. Like they felt that he'd gone off with cramp against Clare last Saturday. He just wouldn't have been at 100%. They brought him on with 15 minutes to go. They made the call that Darren McCarthy hadn't played in 3.5 weeks. He probably needed the game. And then Oisin O'Donoghue, in the old rule, after playing 25 minutes off the bench last weekend, would have been ruled out. Whereas, like, I think the benefit of allowing the managements of both teams the choice to make a call, like that was, I think we saw it probably for the first time that I suppose management doing the right thing there to say, okay, it would have been hard for Sam to go 3 games in 8 days. The right call, I suppose, tip one, the right call was made. Like, it would be hard to drop your captain, or I wouldn't say drop your captain, but leave starting from the bench. But it worked out.
It did work out, and I suppose it shows that there's a level of cooperation there and understanding there between the two management teams. I've no doubt it wouldn't have been a simple conversation between Brendan and Liam to figure out what they're going to do. But Brendan Cummins has made no secret of the fact that his job is to produce senior hurlers for Tipperary. He has said that time and again, and if that means winning a Munster title, which he has done twice in a row now for the first time since, what was it, back in
2003, 2004.
Yeah, and then you've got to go back much further again. So like he has achieved that, and the conveyor belt is moving. We're seeing it already from the minor team that won the All-Ireland 3 years ago. You've got a couple of those guys coming through to play on the senior team now, having worked their way through under 20. I think when you have sensible people over teams who knock their heads together and come up with a solution to the problem, it's always the best way, rather than a rule dictating that you can't do this and you can't do that. Ultimately, Liam Cahill and Brendan Cummins would have to sit down and figure out what's best for the player as well as what's best for the team. And obviously, if you're doing what's best for the player, ultimately you're doing what's best for the team. I think it was a very wise call, maybe not to start Sam on Wednesday night. Now it's easy to say that in hindsight because it worked out, and we end up winning the game. But he did come off with cramp, and as anybody who has played the game or any sport will know, when you have cramp in the system, it's not easy. You don't just walk it off in a day. Yeah. It takes a lot of work to get the legs back, and then to get a bit of freshness into them as well, and to go again. He made a big impact when he came on Wednesday night, steadied the ship big time there too, which was important. And also important for Sunday that he doesn't have another 65 or 70 minutes in his legs from Wednesday night. So I think it was a good outcome from a Tipperary perspective. As you alluded to with the Darren McCarthy situation, he hadn't hurled in practically a month, and to get that game under his belt, or a portion of that game under his belt, will stand him in good stead as well on Sunday. So I think it has worked out well for Tip in this particular scenario. But also, I would say like that. I mentioned Oisin O'Donoghue earlier on there. Oisin O'Donoghue had a very, very good Munster under 20 final too, and he comes into the game on Sunday in great form, and in having won obviously, but then having played so well himself. So I think winning breeds winning, and the momentum is with Tipperary in that sense, driven by the under 20s. The minors didn't have a good year this year. That's the way it goes. They were All-Ireland champions last year. This year, it fell back and fell short. but the conveyor belt still moves on, and you'll find that one or two players from that minor team will find their way into the under 20 team panel next season, and then more of them will come into the season after. So that's the way it is. That's the way the conveyor belt goes, and that's what Brendan Cummins ultimately is trying to achieve for Tipperary and for that Liam Cahill regime at the minute.
That's what Brian. I suppose it's hugely, enticing prospect maybe for if things go well for maybe to go to 10 years. You have Darren McCarthy, Paddy McCormick, and maybe Oisin O'Donoghue inside. And I suppose O'Donoghue was nearly unplayable Wednesday. I think he scored 1 3 and he was responsible for another 4 points from frees, and he won a 5th free, which ended up in his own goal that Dara passed to him. So just watching the game, and it was something we asked Brendan Cummins after, said I suppose getting the ball in direct was the key to winning it, because the full forward line were on top. And he was saying that when you're training guys to hold on to the ball and play through the lines, and suddenly you tell them at half time, go along. It's not as easy for guys to switch it up nowadays when they're trying to do something completely different a lot of the time.
Yeah, look at when you have that quality players, the more often you can get them the ball, and the quicker you can get them the ball, the better. And I suppose, look, it would have been a criticism at times of Tip under 20s the last 2 years that at times maybe they needed to go more direct than and you could argue that they were overplaying the ball at times as well. So, but to have that conveyor belt, I think is, it must be hugely, the anticipation of what the next number of years is going to be like. You mentioned a lot of players there. Connor Martin is another kid that is hurling fierce well. Cahill O'Reilly, the cornerback, like he's a fabulous player. The couple of Ryans there from West Tipperary. I mean, again, they're huge ability, huge, I suppose, potential in the next few years. And okay, I think James Woodlock similarly has spoken extensively that look, he's trying to produce senior hurlers for the future. And while the minors weren't successful this year, they were within, I suppose, a score or a couple of points of most of the teams. They're probably, in the Waterford game, I think they were 5 points up with 15 minutes to go and got caught at the end. But there's the Ewan Murrays, there's players on I suppose that outfit as well that's probably exceptional underage hurlers with big futures. But it's hugely important to be contesting those finals, whether you're winning them better again, if you can win those finals better again. But the fact that you're thereabouts gives those players that extra opportunity, and they're playing extra games. And as with the structured under 20 straight into an All-Ireland, it'll be another big day out for all of those players. It's the best possible development. If you were to sit down and draw up a player development plan, it would include Munster finals, All-Ireland under 20 finals, minor All-Ireland. They've had the best education, and they've obviously had great mentors around them, whether it be the Brendan Cummins or James Woodlock, and that goes back all the way back to under 15, under 14. That whole structure is obviously working very well in Tipperary. I know they've connections in with the college on the fitness side of it as well. So that's success, and that's you're investing in future success. And I suppose they're exemplary in that. But again, Clare have been very competitive underage as well in recent years. So there's the next decade should be bright for Tipperary. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I know that definitely the potential is there. And look, it wasn't as straightforward as we would have hoped. Like, we're 4 points down, or 3 or 4 points down when we got the penalty. Probably generous enough. Okay, I'd say the Clare penalty was generous as well. But like the black card, we just further evidence in the modern game. If you're down a man for any period, you're in big trouble. Like 2-3 to a point after the black for the 10 minutes, and like that was critical, because Tip were labouring. There were, as Brian said, we were being sloppy around the middle third. I know they were trying to work the position to send in a quality ball direct inside, but a lot of the time they were fumbling the ball, or there was a Clare man getting around them and maybe the 3-week break without a game maybe hindered our middle third guys to a certain extent. But I suppose to have come through that and like they have 2.5 weeks now to prepare for the final. I know last year I think they'd only an 8-day turnaround and they were playing the awfully juggernaut. So I would have thought there'll be a fierce drive in these guys over the next few weeks.
So will, Shane, yeah, they came through a testy one, like, and I mean, I think the win over Clare in the round robin was kind of, just kind of comfortable enough down in 6 Mile Bridge, wasn't it? And it possibly led to a little bit of, kind of, we'll go down and we'll win this Munster final type of thing, like, but Munster finals are never easy won. And I think, particularly after last Saturday night too, like Clare would have come into Limerick and they would have been saying, we need to try and salvage a little bit here for the county. And even though they didn't win it, I think they did salvage a bit. Like, I think they really put in a big shift. As you say, the black card was a big turning point in the game, and it's very, very difficult to play play with 14 men now against 15, as we saw against Cork as well. Thankfully, we don't see it too often, but it is a difficult thing to do. Even though a lot of teams are probably training that way in lots of respects now with confined games and that kind of thing. But we march on an All Ireland series now. The winners of Dublin and Kilkenny, I think. Two of the big hitters gone out of it, Galway and Offaly, as we would have thought. So like. We have about 20 days or thereabouts to get ready for the game, and it's a great position to be in. I think there's a real affinity in Tipperary for the under-21, as we still call it nearly, and it has transferred under-20. We love the competition. At club level, we've battled hard to retain it in the county, and it would be lovely to go on and. It is lovely to go on and contest the All Ireland and hopefully have a chance of winning it and backing up that minor success as well. And to make back-to-back All Irelands is a great achievement.
Noel, just before we wrap up, we just touch on football. So we have the Tailteann Cup tomorrow. Playing Kildare in Clonmel Sportsfield at 4:00. Tip lost to Sligo by 5 points last weekend. Probably. I suppose if you could go back to last year when Tip were well beaten by Sligo, it just shows you that Tip are sort of going in the right direction. Very competitive against Sligo, probably just periods before and before half time and down this home stretch where they're struggling to score. It can happen against Limerick too in the league. Like they're finding it very hard to score in the latter halves of games. I suppose they'll be very much underdogs against Kildare, but I suppose it's all about eyeing up that Leitrim game in the last group and get out of that, get through to the next round. It was encouraging to see the likes of Dahi Hogan getting a start last weekend, bringing through some of those under-20s, very unlucky under-20s.
Yeah, and unlucky under-17s as well, unlucky minors as well. Like, so we're beginning to see that there's a bit of pride in the jersey at underage level, and our minors and 20s are beginning to win games, which we hadn't been doing for a while. So thankfully, again, we speak about the conveyor belt in hurling. The conveyor belt in football is probably even more critical because the player pool is that bit smaller. I think it's a good place that we're in Clonmel next for the weekend game against Kildare as well. I think it's let's face it, Clonmel and South Tipperary is the spiritual home of Tipperary football, and I think whatever chance we have of creating a bit of atmosphere and support in the county, we're going to get it in Clonmel for that game. It's a big game for Tip as well, and in the continued redevelopment of that senior football scene, I think Philly Ryan has done a lot of good work, but he'll know as well that there's a hell of a lot more work to be done. And he will look to those under-20s. He'll probably look to fast-track them into the senior panel in a way that maybe Liam Cahill has a little bit more comfort. He doesn't have to fast-track as many together, but I think Philly will certainly be looking to do that. And if we can get something out of Kildare, it'll set us up nicely for the Leitrim game, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and just to touch on the minor footballers, yeah, very, very unlucky last Monday against Cork, losing in extra time. Like 2 extra time games in a row, and they're out tomorrow against Derry in this new Tier 2 All Ireland series. So they're they're going to be fair tired. But I suppose it's encouraging that, and you looked at under 20 Tip are now back on the coattails of Cork. They're back being competitive with Cork again, which is back to where we were 10 years ago when we were actually better than them. So that's encouraging from that point of view. Just before we wrap up, just going back to senior hurling, just I suppose the two key games this weekend, just get your maybe predictions. Quick, just over to Leinster. Kilkenny Dublin is the big one. You're assuming Galway will take care of Antrim and maybe Wexford over Offaly. Kilkenny are motoring nicely, but God, Dublin hurling's on the rise, and I know some people might say, would Dublin have one eye maybe on the home game against Galway the following week? But like, if you're 9-0 O'Callaghan, Brian, and you're thinking, geez, we're going to have to take this Kilkenny, we're going to have to take them down sometime. Why not go and make a statement on Sunday in Nolan Park?
Yeah, and look, I watched the under-20s during the week. I mean, for Dublin to beat Galway in that semi-final up in Tullamore, like what really impressed me was the quality of their hurling. Like, they were really, really good. That, we're talking about Tipperary winning on 20. It does give a boost, to a senior team as well. Nafina winning, there's a lot of positives in Dublin hurling at the moment. The ultimate test, I suppose, in Leinster is going to Nolan Park and trying to win. I think it's kind of ludicrous that it's on at 3:00 on Sunday. I'm not sure who in the Leinster Council thought that was a good idea, going up against the two Munster games. The contrast between Munster and Leinster, it's the gap seems to be widening in relation to interest, in relation to attendances. It must be a worry for the Leinster Council. But as regards, I think Dublin have a lot of heavy lifting already done in relation to qualifying out of Leinster. It's a question now, can they get into the Leinster final? Big test from them. You always fancy Kilkenny and Nolan Park. That's, I suppose, look, you can toss it around one way or the other, but you do expect Kilkenny to win that. But it wouldn't surprise me at all that if it's Kilkenny Dublin in the Leinster final, because Dublin have an awful lot of momentum this year, and certainly have made great strides. And I'd fancy them against Galway to win that and to maybe have a repeat game then against Kilkenny in the Leinster final.
And Noel, what's your thoughts on that one?
I wouldn't see Kilkenny losing Nolan Park, I don't think, to be honest. I think if it was anywhere else, maybe there might be a chance that Dublin could turn them over. But I think it's very difficult to beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park, as we know, for many years. And I imagine Kilkenny will come through that game. I think what Dublin will be looking for will be the performance, to get a good performance, get to the level that they would expect of themselves, and then be ready for the final game. That's I think.
So it's a tricky one for Dublin, because the Galway game is 6 days after it, and you're probably thinking Galway probably will rest maybe some key guys against Antrim tomorrow. They'll still be expected to win it anyway. So then even the schedule and the playing the Sunday doesn't help Dublin too much either. So I think the only solution to this going forward is actually maybe Munster and Leinster sitting down every year, and at least, like, if you could have played Limerick and Cork on the Saturday night, and maybe it would allow more people, I suppose, hurling people like going to matches. It would allow maybe Tip and Waterford people, even though go to Limerick and Cork or vice versa. Like you'd like to see maybe small bit of collaboration between that going forward as well. And just talking about Limerick and Cork, I thought it was interesting after the Waterford game, John Kiley was putting the plea out straight away that Limerick fans need to pack it out, and we know Cork will come. And I don't think the Limerick fans needed it, but it sort of said to me that John Kiley thinks this is more than just a regular round robin game, Brian.
Yeah, he was very upbeat in his post game interview, and with good reason, because Limerick were really good, and as I said, the 6-point margin probably didn't do them justice on the day. Some of their play was top class. The way they're able to move the ball at pace, I think they'll. I actually fancy. I know it's a big ask, and going to Páirc Uí Chaoimh to beat Cork, but I think Limerick will view.
Oh no, it's in the Gaelic grounds. It's a home game for Limerick.
Sorry. Well, look, I do fancy Limerick. I'll be honest with you. I do fancy Limerick. and I think they're going to have a big say in the championship. Having Nicky Quaid back in goals as well has been a big addition that when you didn't think maybe he was going to be available. They've added the 2 or 3 players, the Shane O'Brien, Adam English, Cathal O'Neill came on the last day, look really good. They've added a few players, maybe that to freshen the things up. Kyle Hayes at centre back is a big player for them. I fancy Limerick.
Yeah, I fancy them too, and I think we'll get a proper read on Cork this weekend. Always, like, you look at Cork's last 4 competitive games: 2 against Tip, 2 against Clare. Like, they've been helped maybe by a bit of open defending, maybe a little bit lax. You saw what Limerick did. They went back to the old guard against Waterford. Dan Morrissey back in. I like Barry Nash going to wing back. Kyle Hayes a centre back. Like, I don't think the Cork forwards that were flying for the last few games, I think they'll get a rude awakening this Sunday.
Yeah, well, if you ask me, Shane, who my favourites for the All Ireland would be, I'd say Limerick. I'm not convinced about the Cork team quite yet. I think you mentioned a rude awakening. I think they're certainly going to find a different animal on Sunday when that game comes around. I think Limerick are coming into it with a lot less talk about them at the minute, and that's when they're most dangerous of all. They have huge experience behind them, and as Brian mentioned, they have a couple of fresh legs have come into it as well, which have really added a renewed kind of a vigor to their forward line in particular, I would say. I've mentioned
Shane O'Brien.
Yeah, Shane O'Brien, a full forward. Adam English as well. Excuse me, Adam English is there a couple of seasons, but he's really nailed down a position there, and I just think Limerick are in good fettle. They would be my favourites for the All Ireland at this stage, I think.
Yeah,
but I go along with what you're saying there in relation to Munster and Leinster sitting down. I mean, wouldn't we love to go to see that Limerick and Cork game as well as going to Semple Stadium on Sunday if we could get there at all? But
that's it. And I'm sure there'd be people in mid-tip would have gone to Nolan Park maybe if they had loose end too. I think they're probably. I know each province likes to mind their own and mind their own patch, but especially when there's only 5 hurling matches around that.
Yeah,
maybe you divide out the times of the weekend, so no match crosses across another. But maybe it's easier said than done. I don't know. So.
Yeah, the only chance for Sunday is if you haven't got JP's phone number there. No, we'll get now spin the helicopter with him back to Limerick.
We wish. No, that's just comprehensive. It'll be interesting to see how these games work out. I suppose it would be. It'd be interesting to see, I suppose, apart from Tip losing, which would knock them out, and probably would as good as knocks Clare out. It'd be interesting. You'd love to see maybe the last 2 games of the following weekend having something at stake. I suppose if Limerick did lose to Cork, it opens it up for Clare again, and you wouldn't write off Clare do or die, maybe beating Limerick in the Gaelic rounds either. I suppose from a Tipperary point of view, you're just hoping if we get our job done, we can let them all go at each other the following weekend. And it'd be nice to sit back and watch that, knowing that maybe Tipper in the next round, but that they'll have it all to do on Sunday in FBD Semple Stadium, 2:00 throw. And I know they're expecting fine weather. They could get a crowd around 30,000. It should be a cracking atmosphere out there. And that's about it for this week's edition of Tipp Cast. And my thanks to Brian Flannery and Noel Dundon. And hopefully we'll be back next weekend to reflect on what went on, and hopefully maybe Tip still in the All Ireland race. Thanks very much, and bye for now.